Hi, everybody. It is so good to be with you today. And I'm so looking forward to having this conversation that was inspired by one of my new clients this week. And I know that many people grapple with the same issue. So we're going to dive into it in a moment. Joining me today is Hollis of Open That Door podcast. I'm so happy that you are here today so that we can talk more about this.
I'm so pleased to join you. Thank you for inviting me to be live with you, Diane.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome. I loved our conversation on your Open That Door podcast about a week ago, and so
Mhm.
I thought we would just dive into this additional issue that people struggle with,
Yeah.
and it's gonna be awesome. So I wanted to share with you first what came up in the session this week and why I felt so driven to do this live today. So my new client shared with me, she said, I find it difficult to stay committed to what I say I want.
Mm.
So, anybody listening, can you relate
I
to?
can.
Yeah, I think we all can,
Mm.
right? That, we have these goals and these dreams and aspirations and different things we want to create in our life and experience. And the key to all of that is taking consistent action, but that's also one of the most challenging parts about it. And
Yeah.
so, what I wanted to share today and what Hollis and I are going to talk about is a little bit from my new book, More Than Enough. And we're going to talk about how to move through those moments because what happens is we want to take action on what it is that we are creating. And sometimes it's not difficult to do. Other times, when we have self doubt creep in, or when fear arises, or like Hollis and I were talking about, there were some technical difficulties in setting up this Facebook Live. And when we start to hear that voice in our head say, I don't know how to do this, and
Mhm.
we brush up against our limitations, it's not easy to stay consistent and take those actions that are aligned with what we want to create,
Mhm.
right?
I agree, and I think it's so feeling based on so many levels. If I feel good, it's easier to keeps taking those steps forward. But when those feelings start getting murky or complicated,
Yeah.
that disconnect can happen pretty easily.
That is so powerful what you're sharing. So, feelings and disconnect, and both of those we're going to address today. What I wanted to do is, I wanted to start out with the 3 step formula for success that I share in chapter 7. And what we're talking about is step 2. And step 2, it's on page 119. So, if you are watching us and you have more than enough and you want to follow along, you can go to page 119. And I just want to share a quick summary for people that don't have more than enough, what the 3 steps for success are. And then we're going to dive deeply into the second one, which is this one that we're talking about that can be difficult to have consistency with. So, the first step in the 3 step formula is to have a strong vision. So, to be clear about what it is that you want, because we can't go somewhere if we don't know where it is we want to go. You don't have to have all the specifics, right? But just a general, clear vision of what it is that you want to create. And then that brings you to step 2. And step 2 is to take actions that are aligned with that vision, which makes sense, right? And here's where it becomes very challenging because the second thing I share in here is staying both consistent and persistent. And consistency is the key, but it is the most challenging thing for many reasons, like we've been talking about. And one of the things that you just shared, Hollis, is like if I feel like it, if I don't feel like it, if I feel good, if I feel strong or powerful or courageous, or, I'm feeling self doubt today, I'm feeling insecure. Like those feelings are driving what's happening, right?
Mhm.
And so, what we're going to dive into in a moment is an exercise from chapter 3 so that you can not be unconsciously taken over by
Mm,
the feelings, and which then cause you to disconnect, right? Because we want to avoid the feelings that don't feel good. And we sometimes don't have the strength to face head on what our limitation is.
mm.
And that's why we disconnect.
But I think what you're going to share is that it doesn't, it's easier than we make it out to be. Like it doesn't necessarily take a tremendous amount of strength. It's more of a willingness to face what we're running from.
That's why I love doing these podcasts and lives with you, because it's almost like you're in my head and you know
I,
exactly like the words that I'm thinking. And that is
same.
exactly it, right?
Mhm.
It's we allow it to take over as if it is the director of what we can and can't do. And it's really truly a feeling. It can be a temporary experience. And sometimes I will say there is one caveat, and that is sometimes there's deeper work to be done.
Mhm.
So we do need to look at, if this is a habitual pattern and something happened when you were 8 or 12 or 22, and it created a wound within you where you do go to a place of fear when you're vulnerable, or there's something that gets triggered for you, then there is deeper work that needs to be done. But you can still use what I'm going to share with you to process through the feeling, so that instead of being disconnected, you are now connected to the reality that, okay, in this moment, I don't feel enough, and that's okay.
Mhm.
But I'm going to spend some time honoring that and then reconnect to my courage, or reconnect to the passion that I have, or reconnect to the knowing that what I have to share is very powerful. I mean, let's just be honest. There are times when I don't feel like doing like what we're doing right now,
Mhm.
right? Don't you
Yeah.
have that experience where sometimes you schedule something and you're set to do it and you're just like, I am really not in the mood to do this,
Hmm.
or I'm not feeling
Hmm.
my confident, courageous self, and I don't really feel like being on camera right at the
Hmm.
moment, or, whatever it is. I'm just using that
Yeah.
example.
And I think the key is because it's easy to look at, Diane's leading a Facebook Live. She must have everything figured out. And the truth is, I was journaling. I was actually using a step from your book moments before I joined you, processing something.
That's good.
Um, it's we don't stop. I quickly. This is maybe off topic, but
It's okay.
an actor friend of mine was talking about how he did some video work with the Tomb Raider, and Angelina Jolie was in, and she showed up to set to do some kicks. He was being beat up by her, and she showed up
Fun.
like he said she was exhausted. Like she wasn't this movie star. She was this exhausted. Like, oh my gosh, now I have to do this. And people show up and they're not always emotionally ready for the task at hand.
Yeah.
You say,
Right. And you have to be able to just be with whatever it is you're feeling.
yeah.
And, okay, I'm not really ready, or I'm not capable at this moment of the task at hand. So I'm going to have to dive deep and show up as best as I can.
Hmm.
And it's really about honoring that experience instead of disconnecting from what you're feeling and then just running for the hills,
Right.
which many of us do, especially entrepreneurs, because when you don't have somebody there, and I coach a lot of entrepreneurs, when you don't have somebody there that is requiring that you do something or is waiting for you, and I'm going to share with you one of my tricks and tips to success in this very conversation in a moment. But if you don't have somebody that's waiting for you, it is very easy to disconnect and run for the hills.
I'll
because
do it tomorrow. Right.
nobody's going to hold you accountable, right? And it is one of the things that I have done throughout the 2 decades that I have coached and been doing speaking engagements and appearances and different things, is I always set deadlines that involve other people.
Mm,
So for example, if I don't feel like doing this Facebook Live this morning, I know that you have prepared and you got ready and you took time out of your day and you're waiting for me to show up. And
mhm.
so I don't want to let you down,
Right.
right?
That's so smart to do
I'm
that.
going to show up. And I do the same thing with other things. So when my book deadline was um, getting close, I started posting 40 days, 39 days,
Mm,
38 days, 37 days, 35 days, right? I
yeah.
have clients who have books that they have been writing for 5 years and we're
Mm,
working through some of the things they need to do to really be able to complete it.
mm,
So I had already publicly announced that this book was going to be published on this specific date.
mm. And that's courage. And that doesn't mean there's not fear behind courage or
Correct.
doubt or
Yeah.
insecurity or feelings of inadequacy, but the courage is the action to hold yourself accountable publicly.
And it's also because I really have a passion for what I do,
Mm,
and I know that people will benefit from it. And so I work to get out of the way.
mm,
And
mm,
that is what I share with many people that I coach. I was just coaching somebody 2 weeks ago, and she was stuck on really deciding the name for her business and just different things that were
mm.
getting in the way of her moving forward.
Yeah.
And we worked on a process to help her commit, make a choice, and take action. And it's literally that simple, although it's
Mhm,
not always easy to do because we have to get out of our own way and realize. And one of the things I was sharing with her is there are people that are waiting for you. And I know sometimes it's hard for us to really grasp that, but we all have a contribution to make. And we all have something special that people are waiting for us to show up and do. Even if we're not yet at that level of confidence yet, it really is the truth.
mm.
And
I love
we have to
that
own
so
that.
much.
And that is step 3 of the 3-step formula for success, which is to continually do self-development work for
Mhm,
that very purpose. And it is to own your light, to own your greatness, to own your uniqueness, to own that you have a contribution to give that nobody else does. And once you get to that place, you can start to, the other part of the self-development phase is move through and learn to move through the fear and the self-doubt and the insecurity and the inadequacy and I don't know how to do this and I don't know what to do. You learn to move through that and then you show up. And
mm,
so that's what we're going to do right now. We're going to look at this exercise on page 45.
mm.
Hollis, can you see if anybody is commenting? Because we're on this new software now
Let me check. Let me go out
and
to.
I can't see anything,
Um,
which is not like the greatest thing.
I don't see any comments yet.
Okay.
Well, let's
All
see.
right.
Let me go live. Yeah, there you are. Okay. So yeah, we're gonna wait for comments. It doesn't look like anybody's commenting yet.
Okay. And part of what happens with this new technology is it may not be putting out to Facebook that we're on Facebook Live. So there's some quirks that we are going to have to work through. And that's one of the things Hollis and I were talking about is I spent a lot of time this week researching this new platform and this new way to go on Facebook Live, but there's some things I still have to figure out. So nonetheless, we will press on. I am going to go to page 45. So if you are following along with us, it is the exercise right there at the bottom
Mm-hmm.
of page 45. And this is where you want to go in more than enough. when you start to feel the feelings we were talking about earlier, when you start to brush up to a limitation, I don't know how to do this, when you have that feeling, I don't feel like doing this, when you start to get scared or self doubt arises. So, I'm going to share with you at the top of 45 first, which is the lead into the exercise. And what I share is, instead of fighting it, be with it.
Hmm.
Get present to it. Don't resist it. Just let it be there. You don't feel good enough in this moment, or you feel insecure, or you feel inadequate, or you don't feel like it. That's okay. But don't let it take over or change what is possible for you. Simply honor that this is the way that you feel right now. And here's the key, it's on the second paragraph of page 45. Let it be part of your experience, not the total experience. Just a part of it. That's
Mm.
it. It's just a part of it. Like, I don't feel like doing this right now. Okay. That's all right. Just breathe into it, honor it. And as you get connected to it, which is part of the exercise, as you give it a voice, which is also part of the exercise, what it does is it helps you to process through that feeling. And instead of what we were talking about before, Hollis, which is what most of us do, and disconnecting, you actually stay connected.
Hmm.
And when you are connected to how you feel, and when you're honoring it and you're present to it and you're encouraging yourself and having compassion for the reality that that's how you feel, it starts to dissipate somewhat. And again, there may be deeper work to do there because it may be a pattern and it may be coming from a wounded part of you. And that's just insight and wisdom and information for you to start working with a coach or to start reading this book and to start processing and working through it.
Yeah. It's so because there's almost like a sense of discouragement. I feel like I know for myself, if I start getting into those limited thoughts and that produce those feelings that start to disconnect me from my true desires, and there's a discouragement that kicks in, and it's really easy to say, well, forget it. I'll never get there. I'll never have that. And we do this almost well, I know that I do this sort of self-abandonment pattern where we almost don't even let ourselves sometimes acknowledge what we want and desire because there's a discouragement pattern where we then sort of self-abandon and stop allowing ourselves to even believe that it's possible. And it's that limiting loop that you're talking about. There's a way through that.
Yeah. And there's two things that are really important. The knowing that there's a way through it and
Yeah.
that it doesn't have to be your future,
Right.
right? It doesn't have to be the director of your life and your experience. So there's a way through it. And the other thing too is, sometimes in those moments, you need a coach, you need a book club, like the More Than Enough book club that we're doing right now. You need some kind of accountability so that you're not just left to you and what's
Hmm.
going on within you making the decisions, that you are literally in some kind of process to work through it,
Hmm.
whether it's, setting up an accountability partner or doing something more extensive like hiring a coach or doing a book club or those kinds of things, because it's really important to have that support. I was working with somebody a couple weeks ago, and it was our first session after I haven't worked with her in probably 10 years.
Hmm.
10 years. And I was like, "How you doing? It's so good to be
Yeah.
back with you." And she's like, "Well, I wish I wasn't back here."
Yeah.
Right. And we have to be very careful about saying things like that, because needing to have help in processing through what we're experiencing, or having a coach, or doing some self development work doesn't mean that you have regressed or that you're not moving forward. It just means that you can't get out of your own way by yourself at
Mm-hmm.
that moment in your life. And we all need support, all of
And
us.
there will be, as we grow and evolve, there will be new limiting thoughts that pop up that
Yes.
didn't make sense when we were further back. But now that we're in a more forward place, we're going to just encounter new parts of ourselves that we haven't encountered. So it makes sense that we continue to reach out for that connection, because I think what coaching and accountability partners give us is confirmation that what we want is normal, accessible, allowable, permittable, and we're just something's in our way that is we will be able to move through to continue our path toward our desires.
Yeah, and there's a lot of times when we can't see what is going on, but a
Yes.
coach can see it very clearly.
Yes.
Somebody that knows what they're doing can see very clearly what is getting in the way and give you the tools. And we all need tools to use, which is why I wrote More Than Enough, to work through and process through what it is that we're feeling,
Mm,
regardless of what part of our journey we are in. And I personally will never stop doing self development work, because one of the things that is essential when you are helping other people and a coach is that you are continually doing your own work, because you can't guide somebody to go somewhere you haven't gone.
exactly.
It doesn't mean your circumstances are exactly the same, but if you aren't breaking through your own limitations, if you aren't owning your own light, you can't guide other people to do that. And
Mm,
it's just about really the word you used before. I love your words, they're always so poignant and right on. The word you used before was willing. And we
mm-hmm,
have to be
mm-hmm,
willing to look at the ways in which we're not owning our light, the ways in which our limitations are limiting us,
mm,
and really process through those and get to the other side, so
mm,
that ultimately, and this is the key, we can get back into action in alignment with what we want to create. And taking consistent action over time will get you where you want to go, or somewhere better, somewhere that's more
there
aligned with
you go.
your highest self, right?
Yes. Yeah, we often can't even imagine what's in store for us. We have an
Yeah.
inkling, but it often shows up even better than we dreamed. And I think there's something, we turn away from these harder emotions and we disconnect, and but when we just turn the light on them and gather the information they're trying to deliver to us, it's like you fall in love with yourself a little bit more. Like the thing we're running from actually turns out to be the most tender, wonderful parts of ourselves, because behind those limiting thoughts and barriers is our truth and our light, just like you say. And that's why we're here, to
Yeah.
harness that light and share it, shine it on the world.
That's so beautiful. And it's so true. Like the more that you show up for yourself
Mm,
and get present and feel what you're feeling, and then have compassion
mm,
for the reality that there's a reason you're afraid. There's a reason you don't feel like it. There's a reason you are feeling like, I don't know how to do this.
mm,
And there's a reason those limitations are there. The more compassion you have for yourself, like you said, you fall in love more with yourself, and you really tend to taking care of yourself, which really is our ultimate job. Our
mm,
ultimate job is to take care of ourselves and to encourage ourselves and to love ourselves through everything that we experience, so that we can learn from this journey of life. We can learn from ourselves, we can learn from other people, and we can move forward
mm.
and show up in a powerful way. That really is the key to all of it. And we can't do that if we disconnect.
Correct. And we have
Can't
to
do that.
connect with ourselves first
Yeah.
to then connect with the greater good. And you do such a beautiful job of distinguishing between I I'm not worthy versus I don't know how yet. Sometimes we hit the wall because we feel an inadequacy, but that's not about who we are. It's simply we don't have the skill set fine-tuned yet, and that we have control over and power over. Learning, building up a skill versus our worthiness. Those are very different things.
And if you practice that one thing for
Mm,
the next
mm.
4 weeks, you will probably be amazed how much shifts in your life. if you start to make that distinction between just this overall sense that you hear in your soundtrack saying, I'm not enough, I can't do this, forget about it,
Mm-hmm.
right? If you stay connected and look at, okay, what really is going on? Okay, I don't feel enough right now.
Mm-hmm.
Where is this coming from? And I share in chapter 2 how to start to get connected with where this feeling of not good enough originated from and how it became more solidified year after year. And as we start to do that, we can make that distinction between this doesn't mean in totality that I'm not enough. It just means I might not be that great at this specific skill,
Mm-hmm.
or I may not know how to do this, may not be my strong suit, but I'm going to show up and I'm going to give it my best regardless. I had this happen really the first few times that I was on TV, and I had the honor of working with a dear friend of mine who's been in the TV business and on TV for 30 years now. And so when I would show up on screen and she would show up on screen, I mean, I looked like a scared little girl, like deer in the headlights, and she's just so polished and so relaxed and like
Oh.
so perfect. And so this was like, what I had to work on and
Mm.
work through, because I learned so much, and at the same time it highlighted for me how not great I was at the skill of
Right.
being on camera. And, it's one of the things that I still, it's not my strong suit. I mean, my strong suit is guiding people to heal through trauma and pain and
Mm-hmm.
showing up for people and encouraging them to fulfill their highest purpose. Like, that is my strong suit.
Mm.
I could do that in my sleep. I could do
Mm.
that without sleep. I could do that anywhere at any time for anybody.
Mm.
Like, that's my gift. Showing up on camera and doing what we're doing today, this isn't really my strong suit. It's something that I work on and
Mm-hmm.
that I get better at, and
Mm-hmm.
that I continually put myself in the position to do over and over and over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
And I work at it. I work at it and I work
Yeah.
at it really hard.
Yeah.
And so, but in the back of my mind, it's not like what I am trying to so-called perfect, or that is an
Mm-hmm.
organic natural skill for me. And I think that for everybody, we have certain things that innately we're really good at. I'm a brilliant coach,
Mm.
really good at it. It's an innate gift I have, and I've had immense training doing it and a lot of experience, and I know that hands down. I know that
Mm.
there are other parts of my business that I have to work on, that I have to work at. I'm not a planner in any way, shape, or form. Ask my daughter. She's like, oh my gosh, mom. She's such a planner. She has like her whole life planned. I'm not a planner. And so there are things that I have had to learn
Mm.
that I'm limited in certain ways because I don't plan things out. I just like to
Mm-hmm.
show up and kind of like go for it,
Right. Right.
But that isn't always the best
Mm-hmm.
course of
Mm-hmm.
action. And so I've had to learn to get better at that. So I think,
Yeah.
it's important for us to look at what am I really good at and what do I need to work on? And that doesn't mean I'm not good enough.
Mm-hmm. And when those feelings that stop us get show up, and we turn to them and give them space, like you invite us to do in your book, and in your coaching, then we can start distinguishing the the totality of I feel not good enough, or forget it, I'll never get this, I can't do it, it's too big, from, oh, it's just this thing, it's just this thing feels too big,
Yep.
but it's not the whole thing. We can start finding like the pieces and parts that are getting in our way.
Yeah, exactly. That is exactly it. And I think that's a perfect segue into looking at this exercise on page 45, because I want to give people that are listening something specific that you can start to practice over the next few weeks anytime you brush up against one of your limitations, whether that is an internal soundtrack limitation, or whether it's something in your world, some
Mm.
external distraction that is pulling you and getting in the way, you can always go to this exercise, and I'm gonna summarize it for you, and then you can go back and read it later in more detail and actually do the exercise. But I want to summarize it so that you have something to go to start to work through it. And I also wanted to share, Debbie said, hi, Debbie. I'm looking over here at my comments. She said, I like the words willing and consistency. Those have both been hard. Thank you for being here. Willing and, yeah, willing and consistency, because willing, if we're disconnected, it can be hard to get to that place of willingness, right? We need to reconnect to ourselves and our truth and who we are and our passion and what it is that we really want to do and why it's important. So getting reconnected to that helps us reconnect to being willing, because there's a reason, right? There's a purpose there. And then consistency sometimes is one of those experiences where we need support. We
Yeah.
need an accountability partner, or we need to do what I talked about earlier, which is to set a deadline
Uh-huh.
and to make it public and to like have no choice but to forge ahead, which is what I do. Maybe isn't the smartest, but it actually really works. So,
It, and you can start with a smaller thing, so the stakes are a little lower, but I think it's great
yeah.
practice.
Yeah. All right. So let's look at the bottom of page 45. So there's 3 steps in this exercise, and it's called Let It Be. So what we're talking about here is what we've been highlighting, and it's basically getting connected to the first step, which is to observe how you feel. And I share the same thing there that I did earlier up on the page. I don't feel good enough right now. I don't feel like I have what it takes. That's okay. Be with it. Simply observe how you're feeling without having to do anything about it. And that really is the key. Like, just let that feeling be there, breathe into it, notice where you feel it in your body, bring some attention, some love, some compassion, some encouragement, some kindness, and just the feeling of, you know what, it's okay. And the other thing I feel is very powerful is that there's a reason I feel this way. It's not just some random feeling that is like coming out of nowhere, although feelings sometimes feel that way. But there's a reason that I'm scared. And
Mm,
I'm not just gonna just do it. I'm not gonna just like steamroll through the fear like some people suggest.
mm-hmm,
I'm not gonna do that,
mm-hmm.
because that could go against a part of me that is wounded for some very specific reason.
I'm so glad
Instead,
you.
what, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, because you hear a
it's
lot of people say that.
yeah, just push through. It's not about
Mhm.
ignoring. It's in fact the opposite. It's about heeding the wisdom in
Yeah.
those feelings in that moment, because otherwise you're skipping over and calcifying a trauma or an injury or a tenderness inside of us that we actually want access to.
And it's one of the reasons that a lot of people can't move through fear is
Mhm.
because you cannot willpower your way through a fear that is in the depth of your being and your psyche.
That's right.
Because again, there's something that happened that, and usually it's a series of things that have happened. It's not usually just one, although it can be. But there's something that happened that you internalized in a way that created that wound. You can't willpower through some things.
Right.
It's just not possible.
Hmm.
You have to be willing to bring what we're talking about, which is this love and this kindness and this compassion to yourself, and work through and be able to heal through it. And part of healing is actually what we're talking about on page 45. It is being present to and honoring and loving yourself through it. And then step 2, I give you a way to deepen the processing of it by giving it a voice. So what I share is write out the voice of, in this example, you're not good enough self. So if you feel inadequate, write out the voice of that inadequacy. If you feel fear, write out the voice of the part of you that's afraid. And then listen to what this part of you is saying to you. Write out the fear, the self-doubt, the insecurity you feel about whatever it is that you are wanting to create or have in your life, and write it out in what if statements. And I used this very method to work through fear that was arising as I was writing this book. And so what was coming up for me is, what if it isn't good enough? Okay. The title is more than enough. And the fear that's coming up for me is, what if it's not? Can I get that in there? Okay.
There you
There we
go.
go. See, I told you I'm not that great on camera. Okay. So the fear that was coming up for me is, what if it's not good enough? And I'm writing a book on it's more than enough, right? Is this comedy or is this comedy? This is
It's
comedy.
beautiful. It's beautiful because
But
yeah.
this is why I'm an expert at
Hmm.
this whole conversation,
Hmm.
because I feel what we're talking about. I feel not good enough at times. I feel fear. I feel self doubt. I feel inadequate. I feel insecure. And I do it anyway
Hmm.
by doing what we're talking about. I connect with
And
what's happening.
by writing, I just wanted to say the act of writing it out, because we can never figure it out up here. It always has to process through the body.
So true.
So you're literally moving your thoughts from here through your body onto paper. And it's that distinction that gives you a little bit of maybe distance from the overwhelm. And then you can start hearing what that voice is saying, because you're seeing it's moving through you and putting it onto the page. It's
That's
critical,
so
I think.
it. It is critical. And it really gives you the opportunity to process through it
Yeah.
and to move the energy. Because like you said, when it's just looping,
Hmm.
sometimes we can't like get it to move
Yeah.
on,
Yeah.
right? And so we have to move the energy in some way. Sometimes I'll talk it out if it's something that needs
Yes.
to be expressed,
Yes.
not to that specific person or not, in a crowd, obviously. It would be just me talking it out in a safe
Yes.
place. And same
Yeah.
thing with what you're saying in the
Mhm.
the writing it out and the journaling.
Yeah. Just
Yeah.
using your body to express it is important.
Yep. And so step 3 is to write out what if statements. So to get present to your what if statements, read them aloud a few times and then ask yourself, okay, what if all that happens? And
Hmm.
that's what I did with this book. What if it's not good enough? What if nobody resonates with what I'm writing? What if it's not brilliant enough? What if it's written in a way that doesn't make sense or apply to people? All of those things were coming up for me. And so in step 3, what I did was I wrote out, okay, what if all that happens? What if? What if it's not good enough? And one of the things that I find very helpful in my own life is to get to both extremes and to
Hmm.
really connect with both of them. Like, what if this doesn't resonate for people and the book's a total flop? Like, on one hand, that's a possibility. I can't control that, right? On the other side of it, what if it reaches tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people and really resonates?
Yes.
What if I can't handle that either?
Yeah. I'm so glad you brought the dual side of that coin up, because I think sometimes we're afraid of the other side. It's easier to say, what if it flops and I'll feel horrible and it'll prove that
Right,
I'm a failure? But
right,
what if I'm a total success? Who will I have to be then?
right. Yeah. And so just getting present to both sides of that.
Mm.
And what came from the middle, the center
Mm.
of both of those extremes is, I can't control any of it,
Ah.
right? The only thing that I can control, and that's what I started writing out here, I can control, I can't control whether someone or anyone will resonate with what I'm saying, but there are many things I can control. And then I started to write out what I could control.
Mm.
I can control the actions I take. I can control the energy I put into the book. I can control the dedication I give to it. I can remind myself that I've already had 20 years of success and coached tens of thousands, like thousands of people and transformed their lives. I can connect with all of that. And what it brought me to at the bottom of page 48 is being with what is creates freedom. And
Mm.
that's the reality.
Mm.
Being with what is creates freedom. And it gives you this exercise, gives you this working dialogue to process through whatever limitation you are experiencing, whatever it is, whether it's internal or external. And, or maybe you don't even know what the limitation is, but you're just stuck and you're not moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
Use this exercise too,
Mm.
because it will help you to get connected and start to identify what is happening.
Diane, would you say that at the end of the day, we all the answers we seek are really inside of us?
All of them.
Just excavate. It's writing them out. It's the what ifs and exploring
Yeah.
what is piling up in front of us, kind of covering up that answer until we gain the clarity of what we're seeking.
Yes, it is. It's all within us. And sometimes we need somebody to support us in guiding us
Mm-hmm.
through what is happening that is keeping us from that wisdom and helping us get connected to it.
Mm-hmm.
And it is the way I run all the coaching sessions that I do. I guide people to get to their own answers. I don't tell people what to do. I may give suggestions here and there on different things that they may want to try in terms of what we're working on. But the wisdom that comes from the process that we do in our sessions is way more brilliant than anything I would ever say. And that's the reality.
Yeah.
And so you're absolutely right. It's all within us. Sometimes we can't get to it though.
And it's a reminder, many coaches have coaches. Many
Yes.
therapists
Oh,
have therapists.
always. I have a
Lawyers have
couple.
their own lawyers.
Yeah, I have a couple clients that are therapists,
Yeah.
and I have a coach at different times throughout my life. I have mentors. I have
Yeah.
people that have gone places I haven't gone yet and that I learn from. And I am an eternal student. I love being a student and I love being a teacher. And I don't think you can do one without the other. I really think in order to teach, you have to continually learn. And
Mm-hmm.
in order to really grow in this life and to give it everything you have, you've got to learn. You have to be willing to say, I don't know how to do this, but somebody does.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with me or that I'm not
Right.
enough or that I can't achieve what I want in my life. It just means that I need help, I need support, and I need to learn certain things that I don't know how to do.
Mm-hmm. And when we own up to the fact that every other person on this planet has that same need, nobody knows how to do everything.
That's
It just
right.
lets us off the hook. We can just stop pretending. We don't have to have it all figured out. We could show up fully in our light and fumble with a micro, not know how to turn on the darn camera, or you don't have to have it all figured out or even know how. You just know what you're aiming for, and then the path will emerge. And sometimes you have to lean on somebody. And it's just when we let ourselves off the hook, we have so much more freedom and so much more impact, and it's so much more fun.
It is. It is. It's a lot more fun. And we are then really driven from our passion and from the part of us that knows we're more than enough. And we can really show up with all the aspects of ourselves, with the part of us that feels amazing and totally courageous and powerful, and that part of us that's insecure and inadequate and I don't know what I'm doing and why isn't this working and whatever it is that might be going on. Yeah.
Yeah. This
Well,
has been great.
it's so amazing to always have these illuminating conversations with you. And thank you for being here with me today and for helping me kind of fumble through this new software that we're using that I've been trying to figure out. And I think there's a lot of great things about it and some things
Yeah.
that might need to be adjusted. And that really is the conversation that we're having today.
It is. Yeah, keep moving forward and pivot when you need to.
Yeah.
Slow down when you need to. Stop and pause and just keep moving forward.
Yep. Well, thank you, Hollis. Thank you so much for being here. And I look forward to having another conversation with you again sometime in the near future. Thank
Thanks.
you to everybody who was here today. And I'm not sure if comments worked really well in this new technology that we're using, like it usually does with Facebook Live. But again, it's part of the learning process. And until next time, bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.